The candles flickered like nervous hearts on the dining table, their flames reflecting off the wine glasses Ethan had set with careful precision. The smell of rosemary chicken lingered in the air, blending with the faint crackle of the fireplace. He smiled at me across the table, that familiar boyish grin he always used when he wanted to make something up to me. 7 years together, long enough to memorize his patterns, short enough to still pretend they didn't exist. Happy anniversary, Clara, he said softly, raising his glass. Happy anniversary, I echoed, clinking mine against his. The sound was delicate, fragile, like us. He looked tired. His eyes darted toward his phone once, twice, before he slid it face down beside his plate. I noticed. I always noticed. But tonight, I told myself, was not the night for questions. Tonight was about love, or the performance of it. Ethan talked about the promotion he might get, the lake house renovations, the idea of starting fresh. I nodded, smiled, and let him fill the silence. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But belief doesn't erase instinct. Something inside me, a faint familiar ache, was whispering again. When he left to bring dessert, I reached for his phone. My hand hesitated halfway. I hated that I'd become this person, the kind who searches instead of trusts. But curiosity in a marriage often comes dressed as survival. The screen lit up at my touch. One new message. Can't stop thinking about last night. My heart froze. For a moment, the room tilted. The warmth, the candles, the laughter, all collapsing inward. I read it again as if repetition could change the meaning. The contact name was just initials, M. My mind raced through every possibility. Every name that started with M. None of them made sense. Ethan's footsteps echoed down the hallway. I placed the phone back exactly as it was, adjusting the angle by instinct. When he returned, carrying slices of cake, I was already smiling again. My lips moved automatically. My laughter timed perfectly. But inside, everything shifted. As he talked, his words blurred into background noise. I studied his hands, his face, the subtle way his thumb brushed the rim of his glass when he lied. He had secrets, he always did, but this one felt heavier. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows like something wanting in. Inside, I lifted my glass once more, pretending to toast, while my heart whispered the first of many questions I wasn't ready to ask. And just like that, our anniversary ended not with love, but with the quiet birth of suspicion. I read the message again the next morning, my thumb hovering above the glowing screen. Can't stop thinking about last night. The words felt heavier in daylight, as if the sun itself refused to bleach them away. My hand trembled and I nearly dropped the phone. Ethan was still asleep, his arm draped lazily across the pillow where my head should have been. I watched his chest rise and fall, calm and steady, so unaware of the storm building beside him. His lips twitched slightly, a ghost of a smile. Was he dreaming of her? I locked the phone and placed it back exactly where it had been, careful to mimic every motion. My heart hammered like a secret begging to escape my ribs. I told myself I'd delete the message, erase it, and pretend it never existed. But I couldn't. Something inside me whispered that it wasn't just a message. It was evidence. Proof of a life I didn't know existed within my own home. When Ethan stirred, I turned away, pretending to smooth the sheets. "Morning," he said groggily. "Morning." My voice cracked slightly. I coughed to hide it. He smiled faintly, leaned in and kissed my temple. "You were quiet last night. Everything okay?" I forced a nod. "Just tired." He studied me for a second too long, then smiled again. That disarming grin he used like a weapon. "Let's have coffee outside. The lake looks perfect today." Outside, the air was cold, the surface of the water still and reflective. He talked about work, about meeting a new client, about maybe staying late tonight. Every word sounded rehearsed. I watched him carefully, the pauses, the half-smiles, the way his eyes darted away whenever I met them. Inside my chest, something twisted. I realized I wasn't listening anymore. I was observing, cataloging, counting how many times he blinked before lying, how often he cleared his throat when nervous. By evening, I had a notebook hidden inside my dresser drawer, my truth diary. Each line recorded what he said, what he didn't, what changed in his tone. At dinner, he reached for my hand. "You've been quiet all day," he said softly. "I'm just thinking," I replied, staring at the flickering candle between us. The light carved shadows across his face, dividing him into halves, the man I knew and the one I didn't. I smiled to hide the tremor in my voice. "Tell me about this new client," I said. He hesitated for a heartbeat too long. That was when I knew. The lie had begun to breathe. The lie didn't take long to reveal its roots. By the third morning, when Ethan left for work with that same too casual kiss on my cheek, I waited barely 5 minutes before reaching for his phone again. My hands were steady now, too steady. The kind of calm that comes when fear turns into purpose. I scrolled through the messages, careful not to open anything new. The number wasn't saved under a name, just 10 digits, cold and anonymous. My thumb copied them almost on instinct, and I sent them to myself before locking the phone. For hours I sat by the window overlooking the lake, the phone in my lap. The reflection of my face split between the glass and the water. My mind replayed every moment from our marriage, every dinner, every late-night meeting, every time he'd come home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself it couldn't be what I thought, but deep down I already knew it was worse. By evening, I finally gave in. I searched the number. The results were instant: social profiles, fragments of old photos, and one name that made my stomach drop: Mara Whitfield. I remembered her. The woman Ethan dated before me, the one he'd called toxic, obsessive, and history. I'd seen one picture years ago tucked inside an old album he'd sworn to throw away. She had dark hair, green eyes, and a smile that looked too alive. I clicked deeper, following the trail until the post stopped abruptly. Her last photo was from 6 months ago, a lakeside view that looked eerily familiar. The caption read, "Sometimes silence hides the loudest secrets." Then nothing. No updates. No comments. No trace of her life after that. My pulse quickened. I checked local forums, missing person boards, anything that mentioned her name. My throat tightened as I found a brief thread. Local woman Mara Whitfield. Last seen outside Harrow Lake. No confirmed leads. Harrow Lake. Our lake. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. My mind screamed to stop digging, but the truth had already sunk its claws in. When Ethan returned that night, I was waiting at the kitchen counter pretending to sip wine. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He loosened his tie and smiled. "You could say that, why?" "Just wondering," I said softly. "You've been distracted lately." He kissed my forehead and said, "Work stress, that's all." His tone was light, but his eyes avoided mine. Again. Later, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling, feeling his warmth and the chill beneath it. Somewhere in the dark, I whispered the name I couldn't forget. "Mara." His body stiffened almost imperceptibly. That was when the fear began to replace suspicion, and the questions started demanding answers. After that night, I began noticing the patterns I'd once dismissed. Ethan's late-night walks, the quiet creak of floorboards beneath his feet long after midnight, the faint smell of soil and rust drifting up from the lower floor. I'd never questioned why he kept the basement locked until now. It started with sound. At first I thought I was dreaming. The faint murmur of his voice through the air vents, soft and rhythmic, as if he were talking to someone. But when I listened harder, I heard the unmistakable pauses, the kind you make when you're waiting for an answer. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, holding my breath. The clock on the wall read 1:37 a.m. I slipped out quietly, the wooden floor cold under my feet. The house was bathed in shadows, every shape stretching and breathing with me. At the end of the hallway, the basement door stood like a secret waiting to be confessed. A thin line of light glowed beneath it. Faint, flickering, unnatural. My heart pounded so hard it blurred my hearing. I took one step closer. "You shouldn't have come back," Ethan whispered. His voice was barely audible, but it hit me like ice. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence followed. Then the sound of something dragging, slow and heavy, scraping against the floor. My pulse throbbed in my throat. For a moment I almost knocked, almost demanded the truth. But fear rooted me in place. I waited until his footsteps moved away, until the light vanished beneath the door. Then I tiptoed back upstairs and pretended to be asleep when he returned. The next day, I found the keyhole. It was old, rusted, but not impossible. I waited until evening when he went out for groceries and fetched a thin hairpin from my drawer. My fingers shook as I pushed it in, twisting slowly until I heard the faint click of surrender. The air that escaped smelled stale, earthy, damp, and faintly metallic. I stepped down into the darkness. The basement was cluttered. Tools, boxes, old furniture draped in white sheets. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, buzzing faintly. I moved closer, scanning every surface, every corner, until my gaze froze. On the workbench lay a photograph, faded, creased, and unmistakably real. Mara. Her green eyes bright, her smile alive. But what made my stomach twist wasn't the photo itself. It was the background. Our living room. The air thickened around me. My breath came fast, uneven. I stepped back, the floor groaning beneath my feet. Outside, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Ethan's car pulling in. I turned off the bulb, heart hammering, and slipped back upstairs before the door handle turned. That night, lying beside him, I stared into the dark and knew whatever was in that basement. It wasn't just his secret anymore. I didn't sleep after finding that photograph. Every time I closed my eyes, Mara's face appeared behind my lids, smiling, alive, trapped in the frame of my own living room. By morning, the fear had settled into something sharper, determination. If Ethan had secrets buried beneath our home, I would dig them up myself. When he left for work, I waited until his car disappeared down the road before opening my laptop. The search bar became my confessional. I typed Mara Whitfield missing again, rereading the posts I already knew by heart. But this time I dug deeper. One link led me to an old news article, brief and unremarkable, except for a single detail. Mara was last seen visiting a friend near Harrow Lake. My breath hitched. Our lake. Scrolling through the comments, I found a username that seemed familiar. LaWhitfield93. I clicked it. The profile belonged to Lena Whitfield, Mara's sister. Her profile was filled with pleas for information, photos of the two of them laughing in summer light. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What would I even say? I finally typed, "Hi Lena, I think I might know something about your sister. Please don't ignore this." Minutes felt like hours before the notification popped up. Who is this? I hesitated, then replied, "Someone who might be living near where she disappeared." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then came back. Tell me everything. I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I asked small questions. When she last spoke to Mara, what she'd been doing before she vanished. The answers were simple but terrifying. Mara had said she was meeting an old friend who promised closure. A man she once loved who had changed. The next message from Lena was a photo, a blurred screenshot of Mara's last known location. Coordinates. My breath stopped. It was only half a mile from our house. After that conversation, I started watching Ethan differently. Every move he made became evidence. His late-night showers, his careful avoidance of the basement, the faint dirt stains on his jeans that he claimed were from fixing the garden. I began collecting things. His old receipts, a rusted spade hidden behind the shed, a pair of gloves with something dark under the nails. I stored it all in a small box beneath my dresser, beside the notebook I'd started calling my proof journal. That night I acted normal. I laughed when he joked. I leaned into his touch when he brushed my arm. But inside, I felt like I was standing at the edge of something dangerous. "Clara," he murmured before bed, eyes soft. "You seem distant lately." I smiled faintly. "Just tired," I said, like always. He kissed my forehead, and I pretended to drift into sleep. But my eyes stayed open, fixed on the shadow of the basement door across the hall. Tomorrow, I promised myself I would find out what was behind it, once and for all. It happened the next evening. I came home from the market to find the house silent, too silent. No music, no humming from the kitchen, no faint sound of the TV. The air felt thick, disturbed. Then I saw it. The drawer where I kept my proof journal was open. The box beside it, empty. My heart dropped. Looking for something? Ethan's voice came from behind me. I turned. He stood in the doorway, my notebook in his hand. The pages were bent, smudged with his fingerprints. Ethan, he slammed it on the table. "What the hell is this, Clara?" I froze. "It's not what you think." "No." His tone rose, sharp and mocking. You've been writing down my movements, my calls? Taking photos of my clothes like some paranoid detective? Jesus, Clara, do you even hear yourself? The words struck like stones. I had to know the truth, I whispered. What truth? He laughed bitterly. That your husband loves you? That he's been working overtime so you don't have to worry about bills? Or maybe you're just bored, looking for drama again like you always do? I flinched. Don't twist this. Twist what? He stepped closer, voice softening dangerously. You've been different for months. You barely sleep. You stare at me like I'm a stranger. I'm worried about you, Clara, really. I think you're… Well, the words sank like poison. Unwell. He said it so gently, as if he were offering comfort instead of erasing my sanity. I felt the air drain from my lungs. Stop making me sound crazy, I said quietly. I'm not making you anything, he murmured, brushing my cheek with his thumb. You're doing that yourself. The gesture should have been tender, but it burned. My body trembled between fear and fury. He picked up the notebook again and flipped through it, smirking. Mara Whitfield, he read aloud. Still obsessed with my past? You've really lost it this time. She's missing, I said, my voice breaking. And I think, enough. The word cracked through the air like thunder. You need help, Clara. Professional help. He left the notebook on the table and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The echo lingered long after he was gone. I stood there shaking, surrounded by the wreckage of my own doubts. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe grief, loneliness, and fear had finally blurred reality. But when I opened the notebook again, a faint brown stain smudged the margin of one page. Something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't ink. It looked like blood, and suddenly I wasn't sure who was losing their mind anymore. The storm rolled in without warning, thick clouds swallowing the last light of evening. Rain lashed against the windows, the kind that sounds like whispering fingers desperate to be let in. Ethan had gone out, another late meeting, and I was alone again, trapped in the dark house that no longer felt like home. When the power went out, the silence was immediate and absolute. The hum of electricity died, leaving only the storm's heartbeat outside. I fumbled for the drawer where we kept the matches, my hands shaking as I lit one candle after another. Their flickering glow painted the walls in restless shadows. I didn't mean to go into the basement. I just wanted to escape the sound of the rain hammering above me. But something in me, curiosity, dread, instinct, pulled me toward that locked door again. The key still hung from the hook where I'd left it days ago. The lock clicked open easier this time, as if the door had been waiting for me. The basement was colder than before, the air heavy and damp. I lit a few candles and set them on the steps. Their light revealed dust swirling in the air like trapped ghosts. Everything looked the same. The tools, the boxes, the old photographs. But something was different too. A faint metallic smell that hadn't been there before. As I stepped forward, the floor creaked. I glanced down. A rug covered most of the concrete, but one corner was slightly lifted. I crouched, pulled it back, and froze. One of the wooden planks beneath was loose. I hesitated. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the thunder. I told myself to stop, to wait, to leave. But my hands moved anyway, prying at the edge of the board. The wood groaned, splitting slightly as I lifted it. Then the smell hit me. Sharp, rotting, the unmistakable stench of something once alive. I gagged, covering my mouth, my eyes watering as I leaned closer. Inside the hollow space beneath the floorboards was a small bundle, wrapped in torn plastic. My hands trembled as I peeled it open, piece by piece, until something cold and metallic slipped free and landed on the floor with a dull clink. A bracelet. Gold, tarnished with brown stains. Turned it over with shaking fingers. The engraving caught the light just enough for me to read it. Mara. I stumbled backward, the candle nearly slipping from my grip. The flames wavered wildly, throwing the shadows of my panic across the walls. For a long time I just stood there, staring at the open floor. The smell of decay filled my lungs, my head, my soul. Somewhere above me thunder cracked, shaking the entire house. And as the echoes faded, I thought I heard something else. A faint creak of the front door opening. Ethan was home. I blew out the candle and froze in the dark, clutching the bracelet to my chest. The secret beneath our floor was no longer buried. and neither was I. I didn't move when I heard the front door close. The bracelet felt heavy in my palm, its chill seeping into my skin like guilt made tangible. Ethan's footsteps echoed across the wooden floor, slow and deliberate. He called my name once, twice, his voice softer than usual, uncertain. I climbed the basement stairs with the candle trembling in my hand. When our eyes met, something in his face changed. He looked at me, then at the bracelet I held out between us. "What is this?" My voice sounded foreign, distant. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He stepped forward, reaching for it, but I pulled my hand back. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't touch it." He stared at the bracelet like it was a ghost returned to life. His lips parted again, and this time words stumbled out. "Clara, please. You have to listen to me." The air between us tightened, thick and suffocating. "Did you kill her?" He flinched. "No," he said quickly. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" He sank into the nearest chair, rubbing his face with both hands. His shoulders shook, not from sadness, but from the weight of memory. "She came here," he said finally. "Months ago." She said she wanted closure. "To talk." His eyes met mine, wide and pleading. "I didn't want you to know." I stood frozen, the storm's faint rumble filling the silence. She started screaming. He continued, his voice breaking, accusing me of ruining her life, of using her. I tried to calm her down, but she slipped. Hit her head on the edge of the workbench. I panicked. I didn't breathe. I thought she was dead. I didn't know what to do. His words tumbled faster now, desperate. I buried her near the lake. I didn't mean for any of it to happen, Clara. You have to believe me. I stared at him. You buried her, I said slowly. Here, near our home. He stood, stepping closer. I did it for us, he snapped. For this life. For everything we built together. I couldn't lose you too. His voice cracked, his hands reaching out as if he could pull me back into his lie. I stepped away. All this time, I whispered. You let me sleep above her grave. Tears pooled in his eyes, but they felt rehearsed. Please, Clara, we can fix this. We just have to stay quiet. No one needs to know. We can still have everything. Lightning flashed through the windows, carving his face into something almost monstrous. I stared at him, at the man I'd loved for 7 years, and realized there was no we anymore. He thought he'd buried his past, but tonight it had dug itself back up, and I was the one holding the shovel. The moment he said, we can still have everything, something inside me snapped quietly, cleanly, like glass cracking under pressure. I had spent months drowning in his lies, questioning my sanity, begging for truth. But now, standing before him with Mara's blood-stained bracelet clutched in my hand, I finally understood. I didn't have to be afraid anymore. I smiled. It startled him. Maybe because he wasn't used to seeing that expression on my face without tenderness behind it. You're right, I whispered. We can fix this. His shoulders sagged with relief. You mean that? Yes, I said, stepping closer. I'll help you. No one has to know. The storm outside muffled his uneven breath. He reached for me like a man saved from drowning. I let him hold me, his arms heavy, his heartbeat racing. I even rested my head against his chest, pretending to forgive. But my eyes stayed open, watching the shadows move across the wall. He didn't notice the small camera light blinking red from the corner shelf. Later that night, after he fell asleep on the couch, I sat by the fire with his phone in my hand. I recorded everything, his confession, the bracelet, even the photo of Mara I'd found in the basement. My voice stayed calm, detached. Ethan Ward, I said into the lens, you told me everything. You said she died by accident, that you buried her near the lake. This is your truth. I pressed stop. The file saved with a soft click that sounded like justice. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. I felt awake. The following days, I became what he always accused me of being. Paranoid, obsessive, secretive. Only now it was deliberate. Every time he left the house, I searched deeper. I found receipts from hardware stores, deleted text backups, even a map he'd marked with red ink. The more I uncovered, the colder I became. When he returned, I cooked dinner, smiled, kissed his cheek. I made him believe I was healing, that love had conquered fear. He bought it, because men like Ethan always believe they're smarter, always assume forgiveness means weakness. But every night, I moved another piece of my plan into place. Hidden flash drives, backup recordings, documents labeled as recipes. I was no longer the frightened wife peeking through shadows. I was the shadow, and as I watched him sleep, his face lit by the dim orange glow of the fireplace, I realized something chilling. My fear of him had transformed into fascination. Ethan thought he could bury Mara's story, but now I was writing the ending. The air was thick with damp concrete and gasoline fumes. Ethan's footsteps echoed ahead of me, heavy and uneven as we descended the basement stairs. The single bulb above us flickered like a dying pulse. Once we burn the rest of it, he said, no one will ever find anything. His voice trembled, but he hid it under the mask of control he always wore. I nodded, keeping my tone soft. Yes, let's finish it. He didn't see the small black lens glinting from behind a stack of paint cans, or the recorder taped beneath the table leg, both already blinking red. Already watching. The basement felt smaller tonight. The walls seemed to close in, pressing against the breath in my lungs. Ethan bent to gather the photographs, Mara's image staring up from each one like she refused to be erased. He struck a match. The flame trembled in his hand. For a moment I almost pitied him. Almost. Clara, he said, glancing back, I need you to trust me. Once this is gone, we start over. I forced a smile. I do trust you. But even as the words left my mouth, I pressed the small button in my pocket, the one that activated the second recorder hidden near the floorboards where Mara's bracelet once lay. The match slipped from his hand, hissing against the damp ground. Damn it, he muttered, bending again. His back was turned. I took a step closer. The air buzzed with tension, the silence between us a live wire ready to snap. He stood and faced me, eyes wild. You've been quiet. Too quiet. What are you thinking? My heart pounded, but I held his gaze. I'm thinking, I whispered, that truth has a way of finding its way out, even from the dark. For a second, confusion flickered across his face, then suspicion. What do you mean? I stepped back toward the stairs. You will see. From outside, thunder cracked, shaking the windows. The power blinked once, then died, plunging everything into candlelight and shadow. Ethan moved toward me, fast, but the sudden sound of tires screeching outside stopped him cold. Headlights sliced through the narrow window, flashing across his stunned expression. He turned toward the door just as heavy fists began pounding above us. Police! Open up! The matches fell from his hand again, scattering across the concrete. I exhaled slowly, my voice barely a whisper over the sirens that began to rise outside. Happy anniversary. Thin, and as his face drained of color, the cameras captured every second. The confession, the fear, the end. The house was alive with noise, sirens blaring, boots thudding across the wooden floor, radios crackling through the chaos. I sat on the cold basement steps, my hands wrapped around a blanket someone had draped over my shoulders. The flashing red and blue lights poured through the narrow window, painting everything in jagged, shifting colors. Ethan was on the floor, wrists cuffed, his face pale and streaked with sweat. One of the officers read him his rights while another bagged the photos and bracelet. The smell of gasoline still hung heavy in the air, mingled with something metallic and sickly, like regret made physical. I stared at him, trying to feel something, pity, anger, love, anything, but all I felt was stillness. Mrs. Ward, an officer said, kneeling beside me, you're safe now. We have everything we need. The recordings, his fingerprints, his statements, it's all here. I nodded slowly. He told me everything, I whispered. I didn't know what else to do. They believed me. I could see it in their eyes, the pity, the reassurance. The trembling wife who survived her husband's secrets. The woman who turned her pain into justice. But inside, beneath the calm surface, something else stirred. As they pulled Ethan to his feet, his eyes found mine. Clara, he rasped. You think this makes you clean? You don't understand what you've done. Take him out, the officer ordered. But Ethan twisted once more, shouting, You're not innocent, Clara! Tell them what you... The door slammed shut before he could finish. The sound echoed through the house, long and hollow. I closed my eyes and let the silence return. When I finally stood, the officers had gone upstairs, busy documenting the scene. I looked around the basement one last time. The scattered ashes, the broken matchsticks, the faint scorch marks where he'd tried to destroy it all. My gaze fell on the corner where the floorboard had been lifted, the same spot where I'd first found Mara's bracelet. Only now, something else was there, a new piece of evidence I'd left deliberately, a torn scrap of fabric, faded, red, from my old dress. I bent down and pressed it deeper into the cracks before anyone noticed. Then I whispered softly, "Just in case." When the police escorted me outside, the night air was cold and sharp. Cameras flashed as neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I played my part perfectly, the trembling survivor, eyes glistening, voice breaking on every word. But as the patrol car drove away with Ethan inside, I let the corners of my lips lift, just slightly, because the truth had come home tonight, and only I knew how much of it I had written myself.